Hey folks, I am Kevin Iole and thank you for joining me. And my guest right now is a two-time Olympic gold medalist and one of the best fighters in the world, the PFL champion, Kayla Harrison. Hi Kayla, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you?
I am doing awesome. So I know everybody's been affected by the coronavirus pandemic. You were supposed to be fighting in June, so you'd kind of just be getting in the middle of your training now, getting ready to roll. What's going on? How has this affected you and your plans for the new season of the PFL?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a strange time for all of us. I don't really do camps, so I usually train twice a day, pretty much year round. So I have cut my training down to once a day currently, but I have my training partner living with me. And we're sort of quarantined, but we still train together, going to the gym, working out once a day, sparring once a week. Business kind of as usual for me. It's just a little bit, I can see why people are like taking to day drinking and trying to figure out what to do with themselves. Because when I don't have that second workout at night, I'm kind of like, all right, well, the house is clean, the car is clean. I lay out. I'm lucky I live in Florida, so I'm swimming and hanging out by my pool and stuff. But it's I need structure. I do not do well.
Yeah, it's funny. Like one of my bosses asked me, they're compiling some things that people were doing during the pandemic, and one of them was, "What is an acceptable time to start drinking?" And I was almost embarrassed to ask people that question. It was like, really, And I got when the people, like, I think Misha Tate went, two. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's a weird for me. I mean, I don't know about other athletes, but I never really, I didn't go to school because after high school, I started training for the Olympics full time. So I never really had the college experience. Judo doesn't have a season, so I was
Right.
always training. I mean, I've been drunk a few times in my life, but I've never day drunk before or like not had, training at night or a tournament coming up or a fight. So it's kind of like if I want to have a glass of wine at night now, I do, just because it's such a new phenomenon to me where I'm like, oh, I can do this if I want.
You could just relax and have a little, be a normal person for a change.
Yeah, it's a strange feeling for me, but I would totally give up the glass of wine a night if it meant that life could go back to normal.
I hear you there. Kayla, I know the Olympics, anybody who's been in the Olympics, that's every 4 years, and that's a lifetime goal. You train a lifetime, and you had an unbelievable accomplishment to do it twice. But when you look and you win a professional world title, something that you didn't train a lifetime for, something that is new to you, how does that compare to winning an Olympic championship?
I mean, obviously, it just doesn't. You can't compare. Training your whole life for to represent your country and to stand on the biggest sports stage in the world, and be the best in the world at what you do now. When it comes to monetary wise, obviously it's much more lucrative to be a PFL world champion than it is to be an
Yeah.
Olympic champion, at least in this country. If I was a judo Olympic champion in Russia, it'd probably be about the same. But here, it's a little different. And just obviously, it's a totally different world being locked inside of a cage with someone who's trying
Right.
to beat you up. And that sort of supplements the level of um, the level of intensity to me. Like, obviously the Olympics is intense. It's one day, your whole life, since I was 6 years old, it's what I've dreamed of. But this
Right.
is my new goal. This is my new challenge. And it's so much more intense than someone throwing you. Like, at the end of the day, if someone throws me and I lose, like, I'm still going to get up and be able to walk away. But you don't know what's going to happen when you lock that cage door. And, you
Right.
don't know if you're going to get a concussion or a CT. It's intense. It's super intense. It's like I always thought I was a combat athlete until I did MMA. And then I was like, no, I do a sport and now I am a fighter.
That is funny. I want to ask you this then. So you mentioned you're representing your country. When you're
Mhm.
in the Olympics, how much thought of that is in your mind? I know you're focused on your opponent and what you need to do, but is that on your mind anywhere where you're in a fight? You're just worrying about getting in there and fighting. You're
Yeah,
not thinking, "Hey, I'm representing ATT here." You're
right.
just going out and you're saying, "I'm fighting." But in the Olympics, is that, you hear sometimes the crowd chants for the home country and all that.
Right.
Is that in your
Right.
mind at all? And do you are you pushed
I
by
think
that?
I think, first of all, I'm a patriot at heart. I think most Olympians are, and I think it becomes ingrained in your system. There's something really special about wearing the red, white, and blue, and you do feel as if you're part of something much, much bigger than yourself. Whereas in MMA, you know, all throughout my judo career, I was a part of Team USA, and now it's about being Team Kayla and bringing the right team around me. But I'm
Mhm.
still, that's one of the reasons I gravitated towards ATT though as well, is because I wanted to be a part of a bigger collective. It fits my persona. It fits how my judo career went and things like that. So it is one of the reasons I went. But it's totally, I felt it. And you feel it. You're in the Olympic Village. All the USA athletes are in the same house. You go to, getting your credentials, and you're going through, getting fitted. And Ralph Lauren is, tailoring your opening ceremony suit. And like, it's a magical thing, and it's such an honor. I don't know, to see the American flag being raised. And, I felt it for sure. I felt it.
I was there in Rio when you won the gold medal, and the thing that was interesting is how many American media were there that day. And so judo, I think, is probably a sport where, like, you probably go your whole lifetime without getting too much media coverage, and all of a sudden, you're thrust into the spotlight. And especially in your case, trying to do what you did.
Yeah.
What was that experience like? All of a sudden, you're not just worried about competing, but you have these hordes of people that are, you're one of the most prominent members of that 2016 U.S. team.
Yeah, it was crazy. I mean, I always say, like in London, I was this, 22-year-old, doe-eyed, like had no idea. And you plan your whole life to win, but you don't plan for what comes next, and to be the first for your country. We were just like, we didn't have any, we didn't have any idea. We like hired a media person that day, we started just like trying to catch the wave instead of being prepared for the wave,
Right.
so to speak. So in Rio, I had a lot of media leading up to it. And I was pretty, I grew a lot in terms of, I think, mentally in those 4 years, and was able to handle the pressure a lot better. But I was also just in high pressure situations. I put myself, I considered myself the leader of the team. And if I went to a tournament and I didn't medal, I was the hardest on myself. I expected myself to be a leader on the mat, off the mat,
Right.
and it really, I'm thankful for those high pressure situations such as the Olympics, because it prepared me for, you know, what is the evilness of MMA.
The evilness of MMA.
MMA
Do tell,
fans.
do tell, please.
Yeah. It prepared me to get a little bit thicker skin when it comes to fans and
Yeah,
backlash and being a little more in the spotlight.
I hear you. They can be rough sometimes. It's as hard as a punch in the face. Believe me.
Unforgiving.
Let me wrap up Olympic talk with this question. Obviously, the 2020 Olympics in Tokyo were postponed to 2021. What impact do you think that has on the fight? On the athletes. You're
Yeah.
prepared. You shoot to that one time frame, and now all of a sudden it's pushed back a year. How will that impact them? Do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be different for every sport, every athlete. It's going to be very individualized. Obviously, if you're a 30-something-year-old and you're at the end of your career and they just decide to push it back a year, that could have a huge impact. I mean, the the one thing that all athletes can't escape is father time, right? He comes to get us all. And there comes a day when you're just not going to have the same gas in the tank that you did at 20 or 25 or even 30. And we really don't know when. Sometimes it just happens, and you can't stop it. But I think ultimately it's a really good opportunity for these already amazing athletes and amazing people to show what perseverance looks like. The people who are going to shine, we're going to shine anyways. They're going to find a way to make this motivate them. They're going to find a way to say, you know what, this is a blessing. I have an extra year to get better, to fine tune things, to completely just make it impossible for me to lose, or whatever the case may be. But I think it's just a great opportunity. That's when I knew the coronavirus was real. Like,
Right.
when they decided to postpone the Olympics, I was like, wait, what? Like, oh, okay, I need to be
Yeah.
aware of this now.
Yeah, it is crazy. So, what do you think it would be like? UFC is now planning to put a show on May 9th. if
Mm,
you know what it's like to train and you don't have your regular training routine, you're
mhm.
not going to the gym and doing your grappling and your sparring and whatnot that you would ordinarily be doing. So how do you think those fighters, we want to see the best fighters in the world competing at the highest level. I know one of your teammates, Amanda Nunes, is fighting Felicia Spencer, making her
Yep,
first defense of her featherweight championship on that
yep.
card. What can we expect? Like, and how do you think it's going to affect fighters if that fight does go off as scheduled? How do you think they're going to be affected given the kind of haphazard training that everybody puts together?
Yeah, I mean, I just think it's I understand the desire to want to be back in action and to be the first back in action. And I on one hand I commend Dana White because listen, he's fighting like hell um to make this happen. He's also, you know, under contract with ESPN and millions of dollars are on the line and this is a great opportunity to make even more money.
Right.
And I worry that um this isn't in the best interest of the fighters. You know, you can't get the proper training. You can't really, even just mentally, like training is different right now. I don't care who you are. Like you go into an empty gym with the lights out and like only
Right.
one person. It's very, very, very different. And I think my biggest concern about it all is like all these fighters, of course we're fighters, we want to fight. Like if someone called me and said, hey Kayla, I want you to fight next week, I would say yes because it's what I love to do and it's my calling and it's my passion. But do you think for one second that that promotion who's paying these fighters whatever it is that they're paying, do you think for one second they're going to be like, oh, we owe you one if you go out there and you lose because you didn't have the proper training? Do you think they're
Right.
going to be like, you know what, it's okay, we're not going to count that on your record, like we're gonna make sure we take care of you? Like absolutely not. Of course you're not gonna they're
Right.
gonna be like, hey, thank you so much, we had great numbers. Like they're not gonna I don't know. And you don't see like NBA players begging for, the NBA to be opened up again, but that's because the NBA average pay is $7.7 million or
Right.
something. So when you're making $10,000 to show and $10,000 to fight, to win, of course you want to fight. You need to feed your family.
And how much
Like
does a training camp cost you? And you're making 10 grand, right? So
exactly. So I get it. On one hand, I admire it. I admire the willingness to power on, and I agree. At some point we have to find a way to get back to a normal situation. But people are dying, and it's not safe right now. And I think that the athletes really need to be smart and realize that this is their career,
right.
nobody else's. It's their career, their life, their livelihood. You got to think about yourself. You have to be selfish in this situation because nobody else is looking out for you.
As you talk, and you said the athletes have to look out for themselves, and that made me think of, well, yeah, unionize, but that has never been. I know there've been attempts not only unionize UFC, but just have MMA fighters in general, join a fighters union. And it's from everything I've heard, and maybe you've heard differently, and if so, say. But I've heard it's like the stars that really prevent this from happening because
100%.
they don't have as much in common with the lower level fighters. What's your thought on that? And do you think we'll ever see a day where the fighters unionize and we have a situation where there's a collective bargaining agreement where there's certain standards that have to be followed?
No, I pray that I see that day before my time in MMA is up. It's sort of like, we all have these great ideas and we all have this, philosophy, and we all want to be treated better and we all want higher pay and we all want certain, unified, like we all want all of these things, but it's sort of that like, all right, well, who's going to go first?
Right.
Are you going to tell Dana White that you're not going to headline the card? Are you going to put your neck out there? And it sucks because again, you're not, unless you're Ronda Rousey or Conor McGregor, you're not in a position of power enough where you
Right.
can say, you know what, these are my morals, this is my philosophy, this is where I'm taking a stand. It's dangerous, it's scary, and I hope that I get to the position one day where I'm so big that they can't ignore me, and then I'll take the first step and I'll say, you know what, you sons of but yeah, I definitely think the fighters are their own worst enemy in this case. And it is, you have all different you have people like Connor who are getting paid, who's a realistic goal for him is to try and be a billionaire.
Yeah.
And then you have fighters who, you know, are making 8-8 or 10-10. And the problem also is that it's such a it's such a diluted sport where okay, if you say that you won't take that fight because you don't think I'm paying you enough, I got 15 guys behind you who will fight for free because they're nuts and they love it and they want to fight in the UFC or they want to fight in the PFL or they want this or they want that. And so it's a weird sport, it's still young, it's still trying to find its way, but I have hope. Hope.
A couple years ago when Floyd Mayweather boxed Manny Pacquiao, and that was this huge fight that did 4.6 million. I think it generated $670 million. I think was the number that fight generated. And after the fight, Floyd Mayweather walked over to me because I had known him his entire career, and he came over to me after the press conference. And he had an envelope, and he opens the envelope, and it was a check written out to him, handwritten check for $100 million. And so, I get blown away by that. But here's the best part of that, Kayla, and this is kind of what I think you're talking about. That week, the athletic commissions put their reports out, and I'm looking at the pay report. And there was a fighter on that card where Floyd made, he actually made more. That was just his guarantee. I think he made 275, I think is what he made that night.
Right.
Manny Pacquiao made 100 something. There was a fighter on that card that made $1,500. And I'm going, what is, how is this?
See? And listen, I'm a capitalist by nature. Like, I'm not of the thought where, we all need to be equal. And
right.
I get it. You need to earn your keep. I totally get it. But don't tell me that getting in there and literally causing brain damage is only worth $1,500.
Right.
Or even $10,000 when there are guys who are throwing baseballs and the minimum wage in the MLB is what, 500,000?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
No,
I think it's more than that, but yeah. It's, well, let's get. I know had a rough one today. I want to run this after you. What kind of dog you got?
I have a husky and I don't know what he is. He's a rescue.
I got 5 basset hounds in the house that are shockingly being quiet for me.
Yeah, no, the husky's on the bed. It's a party up in here.
You won the PFL title, as I mentioned earlier. You weren't happy. It didn't seem like with your performance in the finals. What is going to be the next, evolution of Kayla Harrison as a fighter? What do you want to add in the next season that you felt like wasn't there this past season?
Yeah, I think the goal is just to become very, very, very dominant. I don't like it when fights go to the judges. I don't enjoy that. I don't enjoy that feeling at all. Like, leaving it in someone else's hands is never a good idea.
Right.
So just becoming more dominant. I want to continue to become more well-rounded. I would love to get a knockout or something like that. I'm not hunting for it. I'm not going out there headhunting like this is the only thing I can do. I'm not just going to strike to prove I can strike, because at the end of the day, you have to stay true to who you are and what is going to make you win. And being a smart, efficient, effective fighter who is the world's best grappler is what's going to make me win. But I think ultimately, by people being so afraid of the grappling and the takedowns and then the submission game getting better, that the striking is going to open up a lot more for me. That's my hope.
When I talk about your grappling, obviously as a 2-time Olympic medal, you're as good as there was in your sport. So you have that, but the fighters, it seems like when Ronda Rousey came in and she introduced judo to it, people were like, oh, they didn't know how to defend, and now they've learned how to defend that. And I wonder if it's like, so now it's harder to get a submission. People are going, if Kayla Harrison's so good, why isn't she getting 30-second submissions with the armbar? Like, do you just see a higher level of MMA now than, say, 5 years ago?
I mean, women's MMA is evolving at such a fast pace and such a fast rate. Like, first of all, I would say during Ronda's time, there weren't that many pure athletes in the sport. There were a lot of women who, Ronda was a professional from the age of 14. She was on the Olympic team. She was, been doing this her whole life. Of course, I mean, it would be the equivalent to putting a green belt in the cage with me and saying, hey, try not to get thrown by Kayla, or try not to get
Right.
I mean, it's such a different level now, where these girls are not just picking up gloves and saying, "Oh, I think I'm going to try this out." Like, no, women are becoming much more well-rounded. They're becoming much more advanced. It's kind of like what you saw in the beginning of MMA for men. You know, you would see like this classic striker versus this classic grappler, and which would be the best. And slowly, the sport evolved into now, like, these guys can go from striking to grappling to striking to grappling so seamlessly and effortlessly. People don't even know what's happening unless you
Right.
actually do it. And you're like, oh, I didn't even see he had that underhook there, and that's why he was able to get up off the cage, and this, that, and the other. Like, that's what you're at now with women. Is it's becoming much harder. You're not going to see these crazy, wild, like super flashy things anymore, because the level is becoming more even, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's interesting. What I think though is going to happen, I want to see if you would agree with this. I said this in an interview with somebody else before. I think MMA is still growing, and the fans who were like when the Ultimate Fighter first hit, and there was a boom in MMA, they were young men, mostly young men at the time. Now they're fathers with children who are becoming MMA fans, and so I think that's going to portend well in the future. But I think women have a greater chance of advancement for this reason. There's a lot of opportunity for men as pro athletes where they can make a ton of money.
Right,
We
right.
mentioned all these different sports, and there are not as many for
Oh,
women that can do it. So the fact
sure.
that women's MMA can be the one that pays
It's
this
such
big
a
money.
no, for sure, for sure. And the women do make good money, like figuratively speaking. I don't think MMA fighters make enough money, but I think in the sport, women do get paid really well. You know, there
Yeah,
was a
Amanda
time
makes multi-millions so far.
I what's that?
Amanda makes multi-millions to fight as an
Right,
example.
of course. I mean, she should. She's the goat, you know. And if she doesn't, then that's whew, I would hate to be I would hate to be that politically incorrect person who didn't pay a woman fighter what she deserved. But definitely, there's much more opportunity for women to be paid equally. I mean, you don't see that really in many other sports. Even like the women's soccer team. I mean, it's just like there are a lot of opportunities in MMA for women to be financially successful.
Have you seen young girls like at your gym that or training that you think will be like that next generation who will benefit from
Oh,
that?
totally. Yes. Every day I see it and I'm like, oh my God, I have to work harder.
That is
Those
awesome.
bucks, those young bucks are coming. Um, it's also really interesting too to me to see, like, it used to be in men's MMA, and still it kind of is with women's MMA. Like, you see myself, or you see Ronda, or you see, Sarah McMahon, you see these specialists, you see Henry Cejudo. But now what's even scarier is these are all those guys that used to were watching MMA, now have kids, and they're having their kids do MMA. They're not having their
Right.
kids just do jujitsu or
Right.
just do baseball. Like, these are MMA athletes now. And they know like, I have a guy I spar with, he's very young. He just turned pro, but I'm like, I watch him and I'm just like, son of a biscuit. Like, you are
Yeah.
just good everywhere. There's nowhere that you're not good. And that's like, I know where I can improve, like, I know what I can work on, but he's good everywhere. And I'm like,
Amazing.
okay, this next generation is going to be, it's becoming a sport.
I love it. And people on my side that have that ability to watch that, that's what's really going to be fun. So I think that is going to be
Yeah.
awesome. Kayla, I appreciate you so much. I can't wait till you get back in the cage and get to do your thing. Stay safe and keep working hard.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. You stay safe too.